Thank you, Ellen and Ricardo. Yes, we have learned a lot about the situation for the rainforest. And we all know in this audience, as Ricardo said, that the rainforests are the people that live in them as well. And we'll now hear from some of our partners. Our first speaker is Beatriz Huertas. She's a social anthropologist. Please come up on the stage. From Peru, and she's worked for 20 years among isolated indigenous peoples. She has published extensively on these issues, and she's presently presenting a report. So please, Beatriz, enlighten us.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días tengan todos ustedes. Antes de empezar mi presentación sobre la Amazonía, yo quisiera compartir también la noticia que la señora ministra de Clima y Ambiente compartió con ustedes sobre la muerte de 4 líderes
indigenous leaders from the Ashaninka tribe from the Ucayali region in Peru. These 4 leaders were Edwin Chota Valera, Leoncio Quinticima, Jorge Ríos Pérez, and Francisco Pinedo. They were murdered by loggers when they were fighting to obtain title to their territories, and they were fighting against illegal logging that had invaded their community and all the region of the Tamaya River, the frontier with Peru. And this happened only a few days ago, and this situation reflects the tension that exists in the Peruvian Amazon between indigenous people who are fighting for their rights and other, together with representatives of civil society, with illegal or legal loggers in front of a total absence and insensibility by the authorities. The authorities knew that these leaders had been threatened. Their lives had been threatened because of their claim to have land title. They've been fighting for this for 10 years, and yet they were not listened to. They didn't listen to these threats, and that is what has happened only recently, on the 1st of September. Let's talk about the Amazon region now. You can see 2 maps here. This is the Amazon region. On the other side are the threats that we'll talk about later. With an area of more than 5 million square kilometers, the Amazon region is the tropical forest area, the greatest forest area in the world. It is well known for its biological diversity and its importance in the regulation of the climate at the world level. The Amazon forest, they generate more than 50% of the world rainfall, which has an impact on climate at the regional level and in the tropical forests of other continents. It has approximately 385 indigenous people living there that speak more than 300 languages. And currently, more than 20% of the Amazon region is made up of indigenous territories. And this is only a small part of what indigenous territories were at a prior stage. What are the threats? What are the threats faced by the Amazon region? There are many, but mainly they are made up of government policies that promote development projects. And we're talking development in inverted commas because of the serious social environmental impact that this development vision is causing. The construction of infrastructure, for example, such as roadways, hydroelectric plants, and promoting extractive projects, gas, exploration, oil, mining, timber, and also of mega projects of agro-industry and cattle raising. There are very important experiences, very positive experiences that arise from the local populations and that have been contributing to the well-being of the indigenous people and the protection of forests. And you will find these experiences in the report, Rainforest's report. And I'll talk to you about 2 of these cases. There are many more. The first case is the land management plan formulation in the state of Eca. Acre. The state of Acre is in Brazil, in the frontier with Peru. Several indigenous people living in the state of Acre have been formulating land management plans. What are these plans? Well, these plans are maps where they identify the different problems in the territories and the natural resources that exist in these territories. And these processes are carried out in a participatory manner with the members of the indigenous people who live in these indigenous people's lands. After carrying out this study in a participatory manner through workshops, the population makes decisions that have several objectives, and these objectives are to improve the potential of natural resources, to recover ecosystems such as forests and water sources, increase the supply of natural resources for subsistency purposes and to satisfy other needs, strengthen the governance of the indigenous territories, the way in which these people organize themselves to protect, to manage their territory, and to protect in an effective manner the territories. And these are some of the objectives, among others. There are 29 indigenous lands with land management plans that have been implemented through the work of indigenous organizations. The Association of Agroforestry, Indigenous Agroforestry of Acre, of indigenous people, of the Indian Association of Acre, has been vital in carrying out these processes, and they've been so important that they have become public policy at the state level in Acre, and they have been incorporated in the agenda of different national institutions of the Federation of Brazil. Very quickly, I'll talk to you about the second case. The second case is in Peru, in the Peruvian Amazon region, and it has to do with the defense mechanisms, defense process of indigenous peoples in isolation who live in the Amazon region in Peru. Who are these indigenous people in isolation? Well, they are groups of indigenous peoples who, in moments of hostility, historical hostility on them and their territories, especially at the beginning of the 20th century, when the rubber tappers invaded the Amazon region and they reached the most far out places of this region. In this context, these indigenous peoples, they flee to save their lives. And there were massacres, diseases, slavery that affected them. So what some of these indigenous families did was precisely that. They took refuge in the forest. They took refuge in the most inaccessible places of the territories to save themselves. So the isolation is understood as a strategy of survival, a survival strategy. These peoples also have a series of vulnerable points. They're isolated, they don't have no immune defenses against very common diseases like the common flu. So just a flu could really eradicate these people. It's something that's happening. We are witnesses to all of this. Many years could go by before these peoples could have defense mechanisms against these diseases. Since the 1990s, indigenous organizations, some of them are in fact here with us, the International Association of the Peruvian Jungle, Madre de Dios, the regional Ucayali, Loreto organizations, they've been carrying out a series of actions to protect these peoples, indigenous peoples. They have made a lot of progress. They started with the management or the obtaining recognition for the territories of these people in isolation. And they made great achievements. They established the 5 reserves, for example. But we saw that even with this legal recognition of these indigenous reserves, we still had loggers, timber loggers, other extractive industries within these reserves, endangering the lives of these indigenous people in isolation. So we decided to establish a monitoring system for these reserves through the building guardhouses by the very indigenous organizations with the support of their partners, and actions that the local population could implement. And continuing with these actions, we promoted the promulgation of laws that would guarantee the rights of these peoples. There is a law in Peru, the law for the protection of people in isolation. It's not a perfect law, but that's the one that we have. That's an achievement. The Ministry of Health, they issued regulations to safeguard the vulnerability of these people in immunological terms. And also, we went to the United Nations to ensure that they had the guidelines, published the guidelines for the protection of these indigenous peoples. Another major achievement that is currently being implemented with the support of Rainforest Foundation is the establishment of the territorial corridor of indigenous people in isolation. 83,000 kilometers, an area of 83,000 kilometers, that would turn this area into the largest area in the world inhabited by indigenous people in isolation. It is a very important area in ecological terms as well, because it's a source of many of the tributaries to the Amazon River. And finally, I wanted to show that these actions have made a lot of progress, but the threats are still there. They are huge threats, and the defense of their rights in practical terms is a very important pillar for the well-being of these peoples and the protection of the forests. Thank you very much.